listen to me. You asking God to bless you, but you ain't even in position to receive it. You crying out for rain, but you standing under a roof. You asking for a breakthrough, but you still chilling in the same place that broke you. Come on. I need you to hear me with your heart, not your ears. You keep asking God to show up in your life. You're praying with passion, maybe even fasting, crying out, begging for a breakthrough. But what you need to understand is this: faith requires alignment, not just intention. It's not enough to want it. It's not enough to say the right words or repeat the right prayers. If your life is out of alignment with what you're asking for, then you're out of position to receive it. And it doesn't matter how bad you want it, God can't bless what's not in position. Imagine a football wide receiver asking the quarterback to throw the ball, but he's not even on the field. He's in the parking lot. He's shouting, waving, desperate for the ball. But the play is happening on the field. And the quarterback's ready to throw, but there's no one in place. That's how so many of us live. We're asking for the pass, for the blessing, for the opportunity, but we're not running the route, or not where we're supposed to be spiritually, mentally, emotionally, or physically. And we're wondering why nothing's happening. God is not limited. His power is not in question. The problem isn't on his end. It's ours. Too many people are treating prayer like a lottery ticket, not a partnership. You throwing up requests, hoping something hits, but you're not positioning your life to walk in the thing you're asking for. You say, God, give me peace, but you keep running back to chaos. God, give me purpose, but you keep wasting time on distractions. God, elevate me, but you're still hanging around low-level habits, low-level people, low-level thinking. Your intention might be good. You might truly want what you're asking for, but your life is not in agreement with that desire. Faith is more than belief. It's action. It's alignment. It's moving your life into the space where God is working. You got to step in range, because God is not going to chase you with blessings. He sets them up for those who obey, for those who listen, for those who align. When you walk in obedience, you walk in position. And when you're in position, the blessing doesn't have to be chased. It finds you. Let me tell you something deep. Prayers are often answered through positioning. God speaks direction. He gives instruction. But we often don't follow through. Let me break it down even further. A faucet doesn't move, the water flows from it. If you're thirsty, you can't yell at the faucet from the couch. You've got to get up and position your glass under the flow. It doesn't matter how thirsty you are. It doesn't matter how sincere your desire is. If you don't move into position, your thirst won't be quenched. That's how God operates. The blessing is flowing, the wisdom is flowing, the healing, the favor, the purpose. It's already flowing, but it's your responsibility to get in position. So stop treating God like a vending machine and start aligning your life with his direction. You don't get to skip obedience and still expect overflow. You don't get to walk one way and expect his favor to follow. You've got to adjust your steps. You've got to calibrate your habits. You've got to check your surroundings, check your posture, check your priorities. Get your life in agreement with your prayers, because the truth is, the prayer has already been heard. The provision has already been released. God's just waiting on you to get into position. You're asking God to grow something in your life, but you haven't planted anything. You're expecting a harvest, but you skipped the sowing season. You want a return, but you never made a deposit. That's not how faith works. That's not how life works. And that's definitely not how God works. You can't ask God to multiply what you haven't even started. You can't ask for elevation when you refuse to build a foundation. God is a God of order, and that means he honors process. And if you're not working the process, you're not ready for the promise. So many people are sitting around frustrated, disappointed, even angry at God. Why isn't my business growing? Why hasn't my breakthrough come? Why am I still in the same place year after year? And the answer is simple. You're not planting anything. You're not making the moves. You're not doing the hard work. You want God to do for you what you want to do for yourself. You want him to write the book, make the calls, study the material, discipline your body, fix your attitude. But that's not his role. He blesses what you put your hands to. If you haven't put your hands to the plow, there's nothing to bless. Think about a farmer. A farmer can pray for rain, pray for growth, pray for abundance. But if he never goes out and puts seed in the ground, that prayer is empty. That prayer is just noise. God sends rain, but rain on empty ground produces mud, not a harvest. The seed is your responsibility. You're asking for God's supernatural, but you haven't handled the natural. You want him to do the impossible, but you won't even do the basic. Some of you are dreaming big dreams, and that's great. Vision is powerful, but dreams don't grow without discipline. You want to open your own business, but you haven't studied how business works. You want to preach, but you don't study your Bible. You want to be an author, but you don't write. You want financial breakthrough, but you won't budget. How can God bless a business plan that doesn't exist? How can he grow a talent you refuse to develop? This is a truth most people don't want to hear. You're not stuck because God said no. You're stuck because you said no to doing the work. The seed is what gives God something to breathe on. He's not going to send increase where there's laziness. He's not going to pour favor on what you're unwilling to invest in. God multiplies what you sacrifice, what you offer, what you surrender. But if you don't bring anything to the table, there's nothing for him to bless. And don't get it twisted. This isn't about perfection. This isn't about having all the answers. It's about motion. It's about planting something real. It's about showing up day after day, even when it's hard, even when no one's clapping, even when it looks like nothing's happening. Faith is when you plant the seed, even though you can't see the harvest yet. Faith is waking up every day and watering your vision, believing that your consistency is creating something bigger than what you can see. And here's the kicker. Sometimes planting looks like pain. Sometimes it means letting go of comfort, leaving behind distractions, sacrificing temporary pleasure for long-term growth. That's part of sowing. That's part of the process. The question is, are you willing to endure the dirt before you see the fruit? God is not ignoring you. He's not withholding blessings, but he's also not going to violate his own principles. He established sowing and reaping as a law of life. You reap what you sow, not what you talk about sowing, not what you post about sowing, but what you actually put in the ground. That means if you want more, you've got to do more. If you want better, you've got to plant better. Your seed determines your season. So stop asking for God to grow what you haven't planted. Stop begging for blessings you haven't made room for. Start moving, start building, start planting. Because when you sow in faith, when you give him something to work with, that's when heaven gets involved. That's when God breathes on your effort. That's when growth becomes inevitable. You've been waiting on God, but maybe God's been waiting on your seed. A lot of people are sitting around waiting for a miracle, waiting for God to move in their life like lightning from the sky. They think something magical is going to happen while they stay still, do nothing, and stay comfortable. But listen to me. Miracles don't happen in stillness. They happen in motion. You want something to change in your life? You want breakthrough, healing, deliverance, elevation? Then you better start moving, because God responds to action. Faith is not passive. Faith doesn't sit down. Faith walks. Faith climbs. Faith fights. Faith moves. Think about every major miracle in the Bible. None of them happened while people were sitting still. David didn't kill Goliath by watching him from the sidelines. No, he ran toward the battlefield. He didn't hesitate. He didn't overthink. He didn't sit there asking for a sign. He moved in the direction of his purpose. And that's when the miracle happened. Peter didn't walk on water while he was sitting in the boat, hoping Jesus would come closer. No, he had to step out. He had to move toward Jesus. That miracle didn't meet him in safety. It met him in risk. It met him in motion. The woman with the issue of blood, she was bleeding for 12 years. 12, she tried everything, spent all her money, no doctor could help her. But her miracle didn't come while she sat in her house hoping to get better. She had to fight through the crowd, push past the noise, reach out with everything she had, and touch the hem of Jesus' garment. That miracle happened because she moved. She didn't wait to be seen. She positioned herself. She chased her healing. You keep asking God for breakthrough, but you won't budge. You want him to open doors, but you won't even get up and knock. You praying for financial blessings, but won't look for a job, won't learn a new skill, won't budget what you already have. You want to be used for something greater, but you're not preparing yourself to be used. Hey, you know, you have to make yourself prepared to say to God, I want to have the best bad life I could possibly have. You're praying for body best foot, but you won't learn how to pull to play baseball. And then you say, God, where are you? But the question really is, where are you? You got the wrong idea if you think miracles happen in comfort. Comfort zones are where dreams go to die. Comfort zones are where purpose gets buried. You got to understand God doesn't reward convenience. He honors courage. The people in scripture who saw God move in power were the ones willing to take a step before they saw the full picture. They moved in faith. They moved in obedience. They took the risk. And because they did, God met them in motion. Even the Israelites didn't see the Red Sea part while they stood back in fear. Moses had to stretch out his staff. They had to walk forward before they saw the waters open. God could have parted it from the beginning, but he was waiting to see if they trust him enough to walk. It's the same with you. You want to see the split, but you're still standing still. You're praying for clarity, but God is waiting for commitment. He's saying, move first, then I'll show you the next step. Some of you are paralyzed by fear, overthinking everything. You're waiting for conditions to be perfect. But listen to me. If you wait until everything makes sense, you'll wait forever. Faith doesn't operate in logic. Faith doesn't wait for guarantees. Faith moves while it's still unsure. Faith says, I don't know how this is going to work, but I believe God is with me. That's the kind of movement that activates the supernatural. So what are you doing? Are you sitting still, hoping for a move of God, or are you moving toward him? Are you stepping out of the boat? Are you pressing through the crowd? Are you running toward your giant? Or are you stuck, frozen in fear, calling it patience, calling it prayer? Because sometimes what we call waiting on God is really just fear in disguise. And God doesn't move through fear. He moves through faith. God already has the miracle prepared. He already has the blessing lined up. But he's not going to deliver it to your doorstep while you're on the couch. You've got to get up. You've got to move. You've got to take the step. Because miracles don't chase you down. They meet you where your faith moves. Move, even if it's messy, even if it's scary, even if it's unclear. Just move. That's where the miracle happens, in motion. You keep asking God to bless your life, but you're still standing in the same place he already told you to leave. You want peace, but you keep going back to environments that drain you. You want freedom, but you keep running back to what enslaved you. You want God to do something new, but you're still clinging to the old. And here's the hard truth. God won't bless you in a place he's already told you to walk away from. He doesn't pour fresh oil in broken vessels you refuse to let go of. He won't rain down blessings in a land that's been marked for departure. And until you move, until you separate, until you obey, you will remain stuck and frustrated, wondering why your prayers haven't been answered. God operates by instruction. And when he gives you a word, when he tells you to leave, to shift, to let go, to walk away, it's not a suggestion, it's direction. And blessings follow direction. You can't expect God's presence to dwell in places where your disobedience lives. He's not going to bless you while you're still flirting with the thing that broke you. He's not going to give you peace in the same relationship that gave you anxiety. He's not going to elevate you in the same circle of friends that keeps pulling you down. Think about Abraham. God told him, leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. And what happened when Abraham obeyed? God blessed him. God made him into a great nation. But it didn't happen while Abraham stayed comfortable. It didn't happen while he was still hanging around his familiar past. The promise started the moment he moved. The blessing came in the new place, not the old one. Some of you are asking God to do something supernatural while you're still holding on to what's killing your spirit. You're asking for healing while you keep going back to the womb. You're asking for clarity, but your life is filled with noise you refuse to silence. You keep praying, but your environment contradicts your prayer. You want to go higher, but you're still rooted in low places. And until you let go, until you disconnect, until you change your location spiritually, mentally, emotionally, you will keep circling the same mountain. God isn't ignoring you. He's waiting for you to obey. Sometimes the delay in your life isn't the devil, it's disobedience. You're camping out in a season that expired. You've grown too much for the place you're in. That relationship you're still holding on to, you outgrew it. That job you're still clinging to, God's already released you. That habit you won't surrender, it's blocking your next level. And here's what you got to understand. If God told you to leave, then staying becomes rebellion. And rebellion always comes with consequences. You can't expect heaven's best while living outside of God's will. You can't live with divided loyalties and expect undivided favor. At some point, you've got to choose. You've got to trust that God knows what he's doing. If he said leave, it's because he's trying to take you somewhere better. If he said walk away, it's because what's ahead is greater than what's behind, but he won't drag you into the promise. He invites you into it. You've got to decide if you're going to stay stuck in what's familiar or move forward into what's blessed. Let's be real. Letting go is hard. Walking away hurts. Change is uncomfortable, but staying in a dead place is even harder. Staying in something God already left is spiritual suffocation. It slowly kills your joy, your faith, your passion, and you know it. You feel it. That heaviness you carry, that's the weight of being out of position. That tension you feel, that's what happens when your spirit knows it's time to go, but your flesh keeps holding on. It's time to move. It's time to obey. It's time to leave the place God already said goodbye to. Because as long as you stay in the wrong place, you block the right blessings. As long as you stay connected to the wrong people, you miss divine connections. And as long as you stay rooted in the past, you forfeit the future God is trying to hand you. Don't ask God to bless what he told you to leave. Don't ask for peace in a war zone you refuse to exit. Don't ask for freedom while chaining yourself to your old life. The blessing is waiting, but only on the other side of obedience. Sometimes we say God is silent when the truth is we're just disconnected. We assume he's not speaking, not moving, not showing up, but in reality, we're out of range. We've drifted so far from his voice, from his presence, from his instruction, that we can't even recognize when he's moving. It's not that God hasn't answered your prayer, it's that you're not positioned to hear the answer. You're not delayed because God is ignoring you. You're delayed because you've disconnected from the source. Just like a phone without signal can't make a call, a life out of spiritual alignment can't receive divine direction. You ever try to stream something with weak Wi-Fi? It lags, it buffers, it keeps pausing, and you get frustrated because it's not loading. But the issue isn't with the content, it's with the connection. The signal is weak, and the same is true spiritually. You're asking God for vision, wisdom, strategy, peace, but you're not in a place to receive it. You're spiritually buffering. Not because God stopped being God, but because your connection has faded. You've let distractions come between you and him. You've let busyness take the place of stillness. You've let habits become barriers. God hasn't moved, you have. He's still speaking, still guiding, still working. But are you tuned in, or are you too busy scrolling, comparing, stressing, worrying, planning, and panicking to even notice? Are you expecting to hear from God while you fill your ears with the noise of the world? It doesn't work like that. If you want to receive the download, you've got to be in range. If you want clarity, you have to cut the clutter. If some of you are praying but not obeying, you're asking for more but ignoring the last thing God told you to do. And disobedience disrupts the signal. It doesn't matter how loudly you pray if you're living in rebellion. That relationship he told you to let go of, you're still in it. That habit he convicted you about, you're still practicing it. That step of faith he told you to take, you're still hesitating. And you wonder why things feel stuck. It's not that the answer isn't there, it's that your disobedience is blocking it. God's presence flows through connection. When you're connected, you don't have to beg. You don't have to chase. His spirit flows through your life effortlessly. That's what Jesus meant when he said, abide in me and I in you. That's a connection. That's relationship. That's being in range. But the moment you disconnection, the moment you stop praying, stop listening, stop obeying, stop seeking, things begin to dry up. You feel empty, lost, restless. Not because God left, but because you stopped staying close. And here's the part we don't like to admit. We often choose the disconnect. We drift. We unplug, we get lazy, we make excuses, we let pain turn into bitterness, we let disappointment turn into distance. We get hurt, and instead of pressing into God, we pull away. We get tired, and instead of resting in him, we numb ourselves with entertainment, distractions, or surface level relationships. But the truth is, your power is tied to your proximity. If you want to walk in purpose, you got to stay plugged in. You wouldn't expect your phone to work all day if it hasn't been charged all night. You know it has to be connected to a power source to function. Yet so many of us are trying to live spiritually charged lives on zero connection. We want to walk in purpose, clarity, joy, peace, and strength, but we haven't spent time with the one who gives it. That's why we're anxious. That's why we're confused. That's why we're spiritually dry. Because we've been trying to live off yesterday's connection. And that's not enough. God isn't holding back. He's not playing games with you. The line is open. The access is available. But you've got to reconnect. You've got to return. You've got to realign your heart, your habits, your environment. Get back in the word. Get back in prayer. Get back in worship. Get back to obedience. Cut the distractions. Silence the noise. Fix the connection. Because the moment you reconnect, everything changes. Direction becomes clear. Peace returns. Purpose ignites. Favor flows. Not because God suddenly showed up, but because you finally tuned in. The blessing was never the issue. The signal was. God isn't delaying. You're just disconnected. You say you trust God, but your life tells a different story. You say he's your provider, yet every time your bank account gets low, you panic. You say he's your healer, but every time the doctor gives you a report, fear takes over. You say he's your guide, but you still lean on your own understanding. And here's the thing, trust isn't something you just say. It's something you live. It's something that shows up in your decisions, your posture, your mindset, and your obedience. If you truly trust God, it will be evident, even when everything around you says you shouldn't. Trust is not loud, it's steady. It's not frantic, it's anchored. And right now, a lot of us are talking about trust, but living in fear, claiming faith, but walking in anxiety, praying for God's will, but trying to control the outcome. That's not trust. That's lip service. When you really trust God, you surrender the outcome. You stop manipulating situations. You stop trying to make things happen in your own strength. You stop trying to force doors open that God has closed. Trust says, even if I don't understand, I still obey. Trust says, even if this doesn't look like what I planned, I believe God knows what he's doing. That's hard. especially when life doesn't go the way you expect it, especially when everything seems to be falling apart. But it's in those moments when you feel least in control that trust is most powerful. Let's be honest, control is a drug. We're addicted to the feeling of having everything figured out. And when God doesn't do things our way on our timeline, we start to doubt. But true trust isn't based on outcomes, it's based on who God is. Trust doesn't say, I believe because I see. Trust says, I believe even when I don't. It's easy to trust when things are going your way, but can you trust him when they're not? Can you trust him in the silence, in the waiting, in the heartbreak, in the uncertainty? That's the kind of trust that moves heaven. The kind that says, God, I don't get it, but I know you're good. I don't like it, but I know you're wise. I can't see the end, but I know you're already there. That's real trust. And if you're going to ask God for help, if you're going to ask him for a breakthrough, a blessing, a miracle, then you got to trust the process. You can't say you believe and then live like it all depends on you. You can't pray for his will and then fight him when he answers differently than you expected. Look at Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. He was in anguish. He knew the cross was ahead. And what did he pray? Not my will, but yours be done. That's the model. That's what trust looks like. Surrendering even when it hurts. Even when it costs you. Even when it breaks you. Because sometimes the path to glory goes straight through the valley. Sometimes the process is painful. But trust says, I know this pain has a purpose. So many of us sabotage what God wants to do because we keep grabbing the wheel. We pray, God, have your way, and then try to steer our own life. But when you trust God, you give up the illusion of control. You release your grip. You let him lead. And you stop treating every delay like a denial. You stop interpreting every closed door as rejection. Because trust knows that God sees what you can't. He's protecting you from things you don't even know are there. He's preparing you for something greater than you even ask for. And here's what happens when you truly trust. Peace enters the room. Fear loses its grip. Anxiety starts to break. You can breathe again, not because everything's perfect, but because you know who holds your future. You walk differently. You talk differently. You rest differently. Because you're not carrying the weight alone. You're not trying to figure it all out. You've placed it in God's hands, and he never drops what you give him. So stop saying you trust God and then living like you don't. Let your life speak louder than your lips. Obey when it's uncomfortable, rest when it feels risky, surrender when it feels scary, because trust is the foundation of faith. And when you really trust him, you don't need to understand everything. You just need to know that he's good, he's faithful, and he's got you, always.